Welcome everybody. In this video, we are going to talk about how to set intervals in JavaScript. And an interval is a useful tool for writing a function and telling the web browser to execute it every so many seconds, or every so many milliseconds is usually the case. You know, when you're programming in other programming languages like C++ or Python, you have a little bit more control over the main loop, over sort of what's going on globally. And you can delay, or you can say, well, I want to make sure I only want to run this 30 times a second. But in JavaScript, the web browser is not going to let you block the main thread, which means it's not going to let you sort of stop everything from happening for a split second so that you can have the appropriate frame timing or something like that. You have to have a different way of doing it. And the way we do that is by setting an interval. So I've got my code up on screen here. This is the code that we finished in the last video to make a web page that has an orange tree that we can move around using WASD. So I'm going to just load that in Google Chrome to remind you what that looks like. I'm going to open File. I'm going to navigate to my index.html, and I can use WASD to move my tree around. So let's say we wanted to have the tree move on its own, right? We want to have a timer, and we want the tree to move back and forth or up and down, or in some other pattern. So we are going to do this. What we're going to do is set it up so that when the user presses the spacebar, the tree starts moving, and when they press the spacebar again, the tree stops moving. So one of the things we're going to need to do is have a state variable. A state variable is just a variable that tracks some state. So the position of the tree is a state, and we're going to have one called tree moving. We're going to set it to true. Actually, we're going to set it to false starting out. So that is going to tell us the tree is not moving. So the next thing we're going to need is a function to handle the motion of the tree. So we've got draw tree, we've got erase tree, we've got our key press handler. Let's call this one animate tree. And so the first thing we're going to do is check to see if the tree is moving. And this is going to check to see if the tree is not moving. So this exclamation point means not. Tree moving is our, tree moving is our variable. And this just means if the tree is not moving, get out of this function. You know, you can use return to return a value from a function, but if you have an empty return value, then it just gets out of the function immediately. So all this says is the first thing we do is check to see if our tree is moving. If it is not, if not, tree moving evaluates to true, which means if tree moving is false, return. Okay, so otherwise, here's what we need to do. If we're going to have it move left and right, we also need to have a moving direction. And let's say it's moving right to start out with. And this could be a 0 or a 1. This could be right, left. We're going to build our logic in tree moving to just test for this condition. So if tree moving direction is equal to right, then we are going to, we got to wrap this in parentheses. Then we are going to say orange x plus equals tree speed. If tree is moving left, then we are going to say orange x minus equals tree speed. And we could obviously have up and down or any other combination of directions. We're not going to do that right now. This is just when we go into animate tree, what's going to happen is it's going to check to see if our tree is moving. If our tree moving flag is set to true, it's not in this case, so it's going to bail out. And then if it's moving right, it's going to move it right. If it's moving left, it's going to move it left. Now, this is an animate function, so we're going to need to do, if you remember, the way we animate is we erase the tree, we change the position, we draw the tree. So we need to make sure we're doing that here as well. So I'm going to erase tree, and this is really easy to do because we just wrote functions to do this. We're going to draw tree. So every time we call animate tree, it is going to move the tree in the appropriate direction. So we want to also check for, let's say, a Q key to animate and unanimate the tree. So we've already got our key press handler here, which is really nice. We can say if e.key equals Q. We are going to say tree moving equals not tree. And this is just going to flip the value. It's a Boolean, so we can do stuff like this. This little exclamation point means not. Not a Boolean is always going to evaluate to its opposite, so that is just going to flip tree moving. So this should be enough to get this tree moving to the right. Let's see if it works. I'm going to go ahead and save this. And I'm going to go to my web page. I'm going to reload it. So it's not doing anything initially. I'm going to hit the Q key, and it is still not doing anything. Okay, so let's take a look at the console and see what's happening. I'm going to hit F12. So it is detecting, oops, not in there. It is detecting the key presses. Oh, what's happening is I didn't set my timer interval. So the entire point of this video is to show you how to use intervals, and I have failed to set one. So what's happening here is the function animate tree, I wrote it, and it's never getting called, right? There's no code in my key handler to call it. There's no code anywhere else to call it. So what I'm going to do is I am going to set an interval. So the way you do this is you call a function and assign its return value to a variable. I'll show you what that looks like. So I'm going to call it tree interval. And I'm going to set it equal to set, this is another built-in function, set interval, and then the name of my function, which is animate tree, and then how frequently I want it to run in milliseconds. So 30 milliseconds is going to be about 33 times a second. That's going to move it pretty quickly. So what this little line of code is doing is it's saying, I want you to run this function every 30 milliseconds, and I want you to give me an object that I'm calling it tree interval, that'll allow me to control that. So if I want to get rid of that interval later on, I have to actually assign this to a variable. I could just call set interval without capturing the return value, but then I can never turn that interval off. So it's always best to store the return value, which is it gives you an object that lets you control that interval in a variable. So I'm going to do it like that. I don't actually have to do anything with that variable. By just calling this function, it is going to set this animate tree. So this animate tree, this function, is going to run every 30 milliseconds, so 33 times a second. And every time what it's going to do is check to see if the tree is moving. If the tree is not moving, bail out. If the tree is moving, erase it, change its position, and then draw it. So let's see what this does. I'm going to save this. We're going to go back to Chrome. We're going to open our file, index.html, and we are going to touch the Q key. And you'll notice as soon as I hit Q, my tree moves to the right. I hit Q again, it stops. So every time I tap the Q key, it toggles the state. However, it is going to go all the way off to the right of the screen because I haven't set any code to sort of have it bounce or to change the direction when we hit the edge of the screen, right? We've built in the concept of a leftward direction in here, but there is no way to actually check to see if it's hit the edge of the screen. So what we want to do here, and these are called bounds checks. This is a really, really common thing in games. You want to make sure the player doesn't walk off the map. You want to make sure the missiles don't go off the edge of the screen, maybe if they're bouncing around. So at the moment that we increment the x value, we're going to check to see if it's out of bounds. And the way we do that is we're going to see if orange x plus, because if it's going to the right, we want the right edge of it. And that's going to be orange x plus orange size. Is greater than, and we've got a canvas object here, our CNV, and that has a width property. So I can go CNV.width. Should be able to go CNV.width. Let's try that. No. Maybe CTX has a width. It doesn't. Let's try CNV.width. This is something I could Google if I wanted to figure this out. So we are going to set tree moving equals equals left. And so we're saying if you hit the right edge of the screen, now you've set the moving direction to left, which the next time we enter this function is going to cause it to subtract from orange x instead of adding to orange x. Let's see if this works. Yeah, canvas, that C and V is our canvas element. Okay, let's see if that works. It should. Go back to Chrome, I'm going to reload, I'm going to hit Q, and I'm going to see if it bounces as soon as it hits the edge of the screen. Yes, it does. Okay, so now on the left side of the screen, it is going to fly all the way off because I need to implement this logic for the other side as well. So I'm going to do something very similar. If I'm moving left, when I decrement it, I'm going to say if orange x. And this is a little bit easier because, number one, we don't have to calculate the width of the orange because our XY position for the orange tree is it's already on the left side. So I can just say orange is less than 0. Then we are going to set tree moving direction equals right. Okay, super easy, right? We're going to save this. We are going to go back to Chrome. We're going to reload it. And I'm going to hit Q to start it. It should bounce off the right side and then bounce off the left side. There we go. Let's see if it works on the left side. Yep. It looks like it is working correctly. I can hit Q to stop it again, and I can still manually move it. I'm holding the W key here to move it up. I'm holding the D key here to move it down. I can add additional motion in one or the other directions. I'm slowing it down because I'm holding the D key to move it right. So, all of that code that catches the key presses is still there. So we're going to do one more thing before we finish here. So one of the things I want to point out is I'm using my relative variables everywhere. So I'm not manually putting in the size I think it is. So if I change my orange size, this is the power of storing the stuff in variables and using these variables consistently throughout your program. If I want to change my orange size to 32, I can do that. I got to save it. I can reload it in Chrome, and my orange tree will be, should be smaller. Oh, I didn't actually save it. I can reload it. My orange tree will be smaller, but when I hit Q in the window, not in the navigation bar, it's still going to bounce off the right part of the screen because I'm using the same variable to control the size of the orange tree and to detect where it should bounce. So I can change that one variable, and it's going to adjust all of the behaviors of my code appropriately. So let's exit out of here. I'm going to change this back to 64 because I like that a little bit better. And we've got this nice little variable called tree speed. So what if we made it so the user could increment or decrement the speed of the tree? This is, again, we've got a nice little key handler function here. We're using our variables very consistently. So adding this to our program is going to be incredibly quick. So I am going to also now catch let's see if I can use, let's use 1 to decrease the speed. Minus equals 1. That's going to decrease the tree speed by 1. And we also want to do a bounds check here. We don't want to get the tree speed below 1 because that's going to cause weird behavior. If it's, or we don't want to get it below 0. If it's below 0, we're just going to set it to 0. So all this is saying is, decrement the tree speed when they press 1. If it gets below 0, just snap it to 0. We don't have to set an upper bound. Well, we can set an upper bound on the speed if we want. So we can say if e.key is equal to 2, tree speed plus equals 1. If tree speed is greater than, let's say 12, tree speed equals 12. So again, this is just setting an upper bound. We can never go, if we go above 12, it'll snap it back to 12 immediately. So we're going to save this. I'm going to reload in Chrome. Actually, I'm going to open the file because I closed Chrome. And I'm going to hit Q to start it moving. And then I'm pressing the 2 key, which is going to speed it up. I'm pressing the 1 key, which is going to slow it down. We can actually stop it with the 1 key. I hit the 2 key to speed it up, 1 key to slow it down. And you'll notice when I hit WASD, these speeds are also affecting the speed I'm moving it manually by. And you'll notice there's no bounds checks on moving it manually, so it can pop off the screen. We could add those if we wanted to. We don't have to. So that is pretty much it for this video. I just want to recap. We've covered a lot. Main things we have covered in this video. We have talked a little bit about how to do animation by building a little animate function, moving the tree at a regular interval, and we remember our basic animation loop is erase the tree, change the tree's position, draw the tree again. We've done some bounds checks, and critically, we have done this little thing called setting an interval. Right? We've created an interval for animate tree. And by the way, if I wanted to clear that interval, if at some point in my program I wanted to say after 1,000 times I want to clear that interval, you just type in clear interval, and then the name of your interval, tree interval. We're not going to use that right now. If I ran this code, it would do nothing. It would immediately start the tree animation function and immediately stop it. But you could clear it. If the user presses L, you want to stop animation altogether, or if you get game over, right? This is a really common thing. When you have the splash screen or when you have a game over screen, you're going to want to stop the main game loop, and you do that with clear interval. So those are the basic skills in this video. We expanded on our key handler, stuff like that. So the skills check for this video is I want you to animate something on screen. I want you to get something on screen, and I want you to get it moving around using an interval. So if you have any questions, raise your hand. I will take a look at it. Otherwise, you are ready to move on to the next video when you finish your skills check.